What's up, fanatics? Pirates Cubs this weekend is huge. If the Pirates want to be taken seriously as contenders, it's time they start reeling some of these teams in. I'm Tim Clark, and you're listening to the Musings of a Sports Fanatic, a podcast found exclusively here at pennsports.live. So before I get to the Pirates, coming back from my week at the beach, I'm sure you'll hear about that in the random off-topic topic. But as always, want to start the podcast by giving FeedSpot a shout out. Give them their applause. Check out FeedSpot, who's had me in their rankings for podcasts. I appreciate that. Tons of cool stuff that you can find at FeedSpot. Podcasts, and more podcasts at FeedSpot. All right, so it's a big weekend. I'm actually excited about baseball for the first time in a long time, with the Pirates playing better and finally playing well against good teams. Not just winning a game here or there. They're it's a 3-3 road trip to Cleveland and the Yankees. It's the only downside is that the Pirates continue to blow games with that bullpen that they should win. But 3-3 against those teams is acceptable. And in general, during this stretch, I think it started with the Phillies series against winning teams that are in contention. What are they, like 12-8 or 10-8 or something like that? So certainly an acceptable record. But as I said in the opening, it is time. You want to be taken seriously. You got to start to reel some of these teams in. The Cubs are 4.5 spots ahead of them in the standings. And it's you want to start closing that gap on those teams above you. The Pirates are a game out of the wild card right now. Arizona's caught fire. Arizona's one of those teams. They get hot for 2 weeks, then they get cold for 2 weeks, and they've been hot, and so they've overtaken the Pirates by a game to get that last wild card spot. So how did the Pirates start reeling teams in? Well, yesterday they had a very productive off day. They DFA'd Dennis. I'm getting whiplash Santana. And I make fun. He wasn't trying to suck. He just did suck. I felt bad for him. You could see the look on his face. Almost, honestly, the look on his face when he took the mound was one of, God, please let me get some of these guys out. You could almost see he was wishing and hoping that his pitches would get people out, and they weren't. So they picked up some banjo guy from San Diego, Rocky Marciano or Marinara. I don't know. So someone with a name that I obviously can't pronounce, as I can't pronounce any names. But it's big deal, that guy. But they had to get rid of Santana. So part two, go get some real help, Mr. Charrington. And look, I said it, and I think I'm going to be proven right. We'll see. I said back in May, you can go look it up. Back in May, I said he better go get bullpen help right now. Because even as they move Santana out of the closer's role and move Soto in, I couldn't have been the only one that was nervous about Gregory Soto being the closer. And so I said back in May, go get some help. And then when Boston was sucking up the joint, I said, go get Aroldis Chapman. He liked it in Pittsburgh. You might be able to get him a little bit cheaper. I'm sure Boston's saying, boy, I'm glad we didn't pull any trigger on anything like that. Boston's won 15 in a row, and they may not be sellers at this point. Probably aren't going to be sellers at this point. So the Aroldis Chapman back to Pittsburgh dream is over. But but you got to go get some serious help, and it's going to be difficult because there's a lot of teams. I don't know too many teams that are like, oh man, our bullpen is set. We like our bullpen. The Phillies hate their bullpen, other than their closer, but they're having trouble getting it to the closer. So they're going to be looking for bullpen help. Lots of teams are going to look for bullpen help. Um, Teams like the Dodgers and Yankees, that's always one of the spots. Hey, we can, we don't need to do a whole lot, but we can always add an arm to our bullpen. So I think it's going to be more difficult now, and that's what happens when you're not proactive. And that's typical of the Pirates under Bob Nutting. And of course, the rumor that's out there, and it's like a tennis ball back and forth over the net. You have, who was it? Nightingale said that the Pirates would make trades, they'd be aggressive if it didn't raise payroll. And then some other sources closer to Pittsburgh said that's not true, that they would be willing to at least raise payroll a tad bit. Here's the thing. They traded that compensatory pick, I should say, and that saved them about $3 million, I think, somewhere in there. Who was it that they got rid of earlier in the season that would save them a little bit of money? Joey Bart. That trade saved them a little bit of money. I said, come on, man. I don't want to hear about we can't raise payroll. This team is a legitimate contender. I wrote it 2 weeks ago in my column. It was the last column I wrote before my week off. They are a legitimate contender with an offense like they haven't ever had in Pittsburgh before. And why would you fritter that away? We might have a work stoppage next year. I think more than likely we will have a work stoppage next year in order to get a salary cap into baseball. So why not try and win this year? Because if you would happen to miss the entire season next year, and I'm not saying it's going to last that long, but if you would happen to miss an entire season, now you kick Paul Skeens down the road another year. There's absolutely every plausible reason to go for it right now if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates. And here's the other. So let's look at, say they come out of the break. Braxton Ashcraft has been a little wobbly of late, and, they will be monitoring his innings because he's going to far surpass the most innings he's thrown. But I suggested, it may have been in that column I'm talking about, I suggested maybe they go to a six-man rotation. Give everyone an extra half. Look how good Mitch Keller looked after getting a break and a reset. Look, maybe Mitch is one of those guys that, I don't know, you let him roll into August and then maybe find a mysterious injury to give him another 10 days, maybe miss 2 or 3 starts again, and just, come back fresh. I don't know. But I think a 6-man rotation would keep all those guys fresh, and it would be at least somewhat of a solve to the problem of how do we limit these guys with their innings without throwing the season away. So maybe you go out and get yourself another starter if you're Ben Cherington. Maybe Majinski, who I really, he gave up the lead the other night. I don't think he's great, but certainly if you're going to a 6-man rotation, you could bring him back into the rotation. And then, again, go get yourself bullpen help. I think Cherington, there's less than 10 days. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Less than 10 days to the trade deadline. So the clock is ticking on all these teams. You haven't heard any moves being made yet, except for Rocky Marciano coming to the Pirates. So but it's time. It's time to start wheeling and dealing if you're Ben Cherington. But the starters, other than Ashcraft, Skeens, I still don't think he looks. Everyone's like, he's back. He's back. I don't think he's back, but he's better. He's better than he had been. And really, that last start, 7 innings, you got to get 7 innings, 8 innings out of Paul Skeens. I'm willing to give up his strikeouts if he can get 7 or 8 innings. There was a lot of soft contact in that game. That did look much better. I don't know that he's back, but that looked much better. Mitch Keller was fantastic. Jared Jones has been tremendous. And Bubba Chandler was fantastic the other night. So you open up the second half of the season saying, boy, we already have maybe the best offense in baseball, certainly one of the 3 best offenses in baseball, the best offense that anyone in Pittsburgh has ever seen with a Pirates team. And now you get those starters pitching like we thought they would. Again, for God's sakes, go get someone that can close out a game. I know it's easier said than done. Trade prospects. Hoarding prospects is a thing of the past. Hoarding prospects when there might be a lockout next year makes it extra stupid because they could, lose a year of their development, and then you don't know what you got. And when you look, I'm going to jump in the time machine here in a little while, and we'll go back and look at some things. But prospects oftentimes, more often than not, don't pan out. So don't sit there and hoard your prospects. Trade your prospects for some legitimate help. If the Padres really are interested, or at least to listen, on Mason Miller, who's a Pittsburgh guy, I'm listening. And I'm open-minded when I'm listening about what prospects they might be interested in or what kind of package of prospects they would be interested in. Because you get him as a closer or anyone else that's like a legitimate closer that you can actually trust to close games. And you can move Soto to the 8th inning where I think he would take a breath. And you still have Montgomery, who I think is starting to round into form. Really, if I were running that team right now, before a trade hopefully is made, Mason Montgomery would be my closer. I know he hasn't been super trustworthy for most of the year. I think lately he's looked good. He's got closer stuff. I think he would be my closer. But you would have him and Soto, Matson. When you back Matson up to like the 6th or 7th inning, again, he looks a lot better there. So getting a closer would just improve the Pirates bullpen the whole way down through. So there are a lot of, I have 8 sellers: Toronto, Oakland, or not, whatever they are, the A's, the Royals, the Angels, the Rockies, the Mets, the Giants, and the Reds. And then I think Detroit, San Diego, Baltimore, and Houston are sort of maybe, hey, well, listen, we're not sure what we're doing here. I think Houston probably keeps everything intact because they're only 2 games out of first place in that god-awful American League West. I think Baltimore probably sells. Detroit and San Diego, I think probably because of the teams they built. And in Detroit's case, the question will become, do we keep Tarek Skubal and go for it? Or do we trade Tarek Skubal for a boatload of stuff coming back? So with only 8 definite sellers, and I can't believe Toronto's on that list. I sure had that wrong this year. I thought they would bounce back and get in the playoff hunt, and it turns out Boston got back into the playoff hunt. Could we? What I'm getting at here, when there's not a lot of sellers that are going to, want prospects, could we see maybe a few more? We'll give you our first baseman for your third baseman. Like, could we see a few more major leaguer for major leaguer trades because of the lack of sellers? If that's the case, and I go back to Pittsburgh, so no one wants Marcell Ozuna. I think what happens to Marcell Ozuna, if I were running the team, Spencer Horwitz is close to coming back off the injured list. I'm not moving Ryan O'Hearn off first base. He is a clear upgrade at first base, And yes, defense is important at first base. It's not like Little League where they threw me at first base. They throw the slow kid. I was the slow kid, or a guy that's not great defensively. That's not the case at the major league level in 2026. And I want Ryan O'Hearn at first base. So Horowitz comes back. You're going to have to cut bait on Marcell Ozuna and just acknowledge, look, we got half a year out of it. It wasn't good. So it's not like you're not throwing the whole salary away. You're only throwing half the salary away. I don't think anyone would want him in a trade. I mean, you could throw it out there, but I doubt that you would get any takers. So now let's put Horowitz in there. Osuna's out. So you've got four guys that I think you could maybe potentially throw into a trade scenario. Now, the one I'm least favorable on is O'Neal Cruz. I think you keep O'Neal Cruz. I see a lot of people saying they want O'Neal Cruz thrown into a trade. I suppose you could make the argument, because of how good the offense has continued to be without him in it, that if San Diego, for example, said, hey, O'Neal Cruz and one of your higher prospects, and we'll give you Mason Miller, I suppose I could make the argument that you could make that trade. Otherwise, though, I'm keeping O'Neal Cruz. We've waited and waited and waited, and finally this year, before he got hurt, he started to be the hitter that we were hoping he would be. So I really don't want to see them trade him unless it is like a specific scenario like Mason Miller. I think I have Jake Mangum down here, but the more I look at his name, I don't know that he would bring you much. And I think you want him on your team. I think he bothers the opponents. I do. His base running bothers me. The fact that he swings at so many bad pitches bothers me. But at the end of the day, a guy that'll reach his bat out and just bloop one out into left field on a 2-strike count, that just POs the pitcher to no end. And so I want him on my team. So the more I look at, and I'm actually looking at my TV screen, and they're showing one of the at-bats against the Yankees where he literally threw his bat out and blooped one out into center field with 2 strikes. So I take that back. I don't know that I would want him. Here's the one, though. Hear me out on this. Brandon Lau. Now, he would be a rental because this is the last year of his contract. So he's on a rental. But he's got a lot of pop in his bat. And he has proven this year with Pittsburgh that his defense is better than what was advertised. So you would be getting a pretty good all-around player. And here's why I say this, that the Pirates should entertain putting him into a trade. He's on an expiring contract that I don't think the Pirates are going to. I don't think they have any intention of signing him next year. B, he hasn't been very good for the last month. His numbers are not good for the last month, which other teams will see that too. So that might make it more difficult to trade him. C, it would allow you to get Nick Gonzalez, whose bat has to be in the lineup, but his defense at third base is just dreadful. His defense at second base wasn't good either. Well, I don't know. As I'm saying that out loud, I don't know which spot I'd rather see him at. DH, but we have too many DHs. And so you could play around with that. And then the other Gonzalez kid they just got in the trade, who looks like, I poo-pooed that trade, and I apologize. Now, I was right about the pitcher. Brandon Eisert should be cut. I do not want to see Brandon Eisert on a Pittsburgh Pirates mound anytime soon. He is disastrous. But this Gonzalez kid looks like he's a player, and he can play second base. So you would, in other words, you would have options at second base if you're the Pirates. Jared Triolo can bounce over to third base. When Connor Griffin comes back, you would have options. I think I am definitely listening. Anyone that wants Brandon Lau thrown into a trade that's going to get me something of worth, I'm going to be willing to do that. And then last but not least would be the aforementioned Spencer Horowitz. he proved me wrong. I thought he was not going to hit very much, and he's been a really good hitter. He's an on base machine. Even though he's not prototypical leadoff guy, you put him in the leadoff spot and he gets on base. He walks more than he strikes out. His average is what, 280. 8 or 9 home runs before he got hurt. So he was on pace for maybe 20 home runs, 17 to 20 home runs. Um, but I want Ryan O'Hearn at first base. And now with Esmeralyn Valdez, it's got to be in the lineup in right field. By the way, he's not a bad right fielder. He's a very, very acceptable right fielder. So it would improve your defense, and you certainly wouldn't lose much on offense. Horowitz has been out for a month now, and they haven't missed a beat. So I'm listening to offers for, well, Marcelo Zuna, if anyone's dumb enough, Spencer Horowitz, and Brandon Lau, even though he's been fantastic. Now, here's the one downside. Does that hurt the clubhouse? Like, for example, I go across the state. I think the Phillies would be very leery of trading a Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm, even though maybe they're not performing quite to the expectations they want. Because I think the Phillies have got a clubhouse that gels. You've got Schwarber and Harper, kind of the leaders there. Trey Turner, Real Muto, but I think they all just kind of fit in. They're kind of dirt dogs, they. So I think GMs sometimes look at that. So if you trade Brandon Lau, does that put a crevice in the locker room? I don't think that should be the be all end all of a decision on whether to trade someone, but I do think it factors in. I think it factors in. Is this going to really, this guy's one of the leaders of the team, is this going to kind of shred the clubhouse a little bit? I think if you show the remaining players, look what we got that's going to help our bullpen or our starters or whatever, I think they would get over it in a hurry, because ultimately the idea is they want to win. So those are the players, the position players that I think the Pirates would maybe entertain putting into a trade. And I think I could be wrong. Trade deadlines are pretty unpredictable. But because of only 8 sellers, I think it is possible that you could see maybe 1 or 2 major leaguer for major leaguer. Hey, we need a pitcher, you need a catcher or a third baseman or whatever it may be. And we've got that for you. So keep an eye on that. But it is interesting. Boston's only 6. Tampa Bay doesn't have that East on lockdown. New York's 2 back, Boston's 6.5 back. Boston's a legitimate playoff team now. So they're going to be buyers, not sellers. The American League Central, the White Sox are still hanging in there. Cleveland is right there. Minnesota, there's another one I should have added to the maybe list. I don't know how Minnesota views themselves, and they're running out of time. They kind of keep hovering around 2 or 3 below 500, but in the American League, 2 or 3 below 500 keeps you right in the hunt. Both for the wild card, and they're only 4.5 out for the division. And then Detroit 6 out for the division, even though they're 5 games below 500. So I think a couple of those teams, you might not sure what they want to do. And then, like I said, the American League West is a disaster. I think Houston, when you're only 2 games back, even though you're 50 and 54, you're 2 games back, it would be hard to tell your fans hey, we decided to throw in the towel. We were the whole way 2 games back, and they have the best hitter in baseball in Alvarez. So I think Houston probably at least stands pat. And then you come over to the National League, Miami and Washington, I keep asking myself, are they really contenders or not? That offense in Washington's the real deal. Pitching is a little suspect. But do they add pitching and say, hey, we're going to go for it? I think they could. I think Miami's a more interesting situation. I think ultimately they want to trade Sandy Alcantara, age, contract, all that stuff. And I don't know, even though they're 1 game above 500, so they're like 2 games out of the wild card. I don't know if Miami considers themselves contenders. Um, so we'll see about them. In the Central, I think the top 4 teams are all going to go for it. St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, the only team that's not going to go for it, which I really thought Terry Francona might have them on the uptick, but not yet. And then out west, San Diego's the swing team because of Arizona's hot streak here of late. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're 5 above 500 and in the wild card spot as we speak. They're gonna be buyers. I think San Diego's the swing team. I think maybe they'd like to shed some payroll and kind of regroup and restart. But the ownership that they got there has tons of money, and they have been willing to spend, are willing to spend. So I don't know. I don't know about San Diego. But with less than 10 days, it's going to get interesting here real quick. By next week, when I do the taping, I think we'll probably have at least a few trades already, but maybe not many. This might come down to that. What is it? August 3rd, I think, is the date. This might come right down to that deadline because I think there's so many teams still jockeying. And there's going to be, I'm going to go back and use Mason Miller, even though he may not get traded. But San Diego would be in a position to say, well, let me hear what the Pirates' offer is. Let me hear what, whoever this team's offer is. Let me hear what the Dodgers' offer. Like, they would be in a position to take what they think is the best offer. So they may hold out. And again, I'm just using him for an example. He may not even get traded. It's probably 30-70 right now. I would think that he gets traded. But I was using it. So if someone has a coveted guy, especially from that group of sellers, they are going to have the opportunity to wait for the offer they want. So this might come down to the August 3rd deadline, and all of a sudden, like we've seen so many times, is bing, 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 bing. You're watching MLB Network, and the little music comes on, and hey, we have a trade. So we shall see how that plays out. So. All right. I am going to jump into the time machine because I want to talk a little bit about some past trade deadlines for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So see what's in the old 8-track this week. Oh, gosh. I was anxious to tape and I forgot my speaker. You're not going to be able to hear it. Going to cut it short because without my speaker hooked up, which I forgot, you may not have heard Pat Benatar, Shadows of the Night, my favorite Pat Benatar song from back in the day. So past Pirate trade deadlines, and we're talking, the time machine is not going to, it's going to not have to cool down very much. We're only going to go back through the last 4 years because Ben Cherington, I wanted to talk about recent Ben Cherington trade deadlines. So in 2022, I thought this was a good trade. Jose Quintana went to St. Louis, and the Pirates got Johan Oviedo. I loved Oviedo. He got hurt in Boston this year. Tommy John. Feel bad for him because I think, was it 3 years ago, I guess? Was it 3 years ago? Yeah, 2023. He became a workhorse. I mean, and there was not pitch count wasn't such a thing for him in Pittsburgh. Shelton just worked him, and other than the only reason he didn't have superstar numbers that year, he had about 3 really awful outings, like gave up 10 runs, 8 runs, 9 runs, in 3 innings, and it boosted up his ERA. But when you looked inside his numbers and then you took it game by game, those other 25 or whatever it was starts were really good. So I liked Johan Oviedo. And of course, he got shifted off to Boston here last year, and we got the password, who I'm not sure is going to cut it. It's a little early. I think he gets one more chance in the major leagues at some point before we deem him not worthy of the major leagues. But anyway, so I thought that was a decent trade. Moving up to 2023, that was a year that the Pirates had nothing but crap, and they traded some of that crap for some other team's crap. So I didn't even write the names down. It was literally just our crap for your crap. And back to a comment I made. So a lot of these trades, and I'm going to get to some on the Pirates end of it, you're trading prospects or you're getting prospects back, and 90% of them don't pan out. And that's why I'm saying Charrington this year can't hold on to these prospects like they're gold, because some of them won't pan out. And maybe some of them will, but a lot of them won't pan out. And they look, the Pirates, Murph Gray is killing the ball. He's at Altoona right now. You still have Tamar Johnson, who's a guy I would trade because I don't know, the shine is off his star a little bit. This Florentino kid, of course, the Hernandez, the pitcher. A couple other arms down there. They have a lot of good prospects that they could trade. And I think you make some moves if you can. So 2023, anyway, was crap for crap. 2024, we got Billy Cook, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, which dud. Brian Dela Cruz, bigger dud. And Jalen Beeks, also a dud. And Nick York, who's going to be a dud. He's still in the process of being a dud, but he'll be a dud. Billy Cook's the best of that bunch right now. Billy Cook is the best player of that bunch because you can at least trust him on defense late in games. He's the 25th guy. He raises the cone like nobody else in the dugout. But you see there, that's so they were going for it. So if you're a little nervous like I am at this trade deadline this year because the Pirates are going for it, that's what Charrington did when he went for it. We got the likes of Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Brian Dela Cruz, Jalen Beeks, Nick York, and Billy Cook. Not one of those guys helped. Brian Dela Cruz was an absolute disaster. I think the Phillies picked him up. I think he's hurt. I think he's not even playing right now. So, that worries me because that was a go for it year. And then last year, 2025 was a not go for it year. And we traded Bailey Falter for Callan Moss and Evan Sisk. Sisk is a useful lefty in the bullpen. He's hurt right now. Moss is one of those prospects that he won't make it. You can book that. He won't make it. Now, Bailey Falter is done. He was done when they traded him. He is done now. He's done. So no problem. You got a useful reliever out of that. That's not a bad deal. We traded Caleb Ferguson for Jeter Martinez, I think, from Seattle. There's a name. Don't get used to it. Don't learn it because he won't make it. We traded, thank God, Brian Hayes. I can't believe that the Reds were dumb enough to take him. And the Reds fans have hated it every day since then. And we got two prospects. The one that may pan out is Sammy Stafora. His numbers are okay in the minor leagues. But again, I wouldn't be counting on Marinaccio, I see. Not Rocky Marciano, Ron Marinaccio. I was close. That's who the Pirates got and that allowed them to get rid of Dennis Santana. Anyway, back to the time machine. So Sammy Stafora might make it. Might. That's a big might, though. But getting rid of Brian Hayes, really, I give Charrington credit. Bad trade year in 2024, which is what makes me nervous. He also seems to be on the every other year, which would mean this would be the bad year. And again, when they're going for it, he doesn't, probably partially because the owner's an idiot and tells them, "Oh, you better not add too much payroll." But last year, the big trade, and this was the bad one. The other trades that I just mentioned were fine. This was the bad one. David Bednar for three guys, two of them catchers, including Rafael Flores, who was the best of the prospects. Rafael Flores is an absolute butcher behind the plate. It's why he's listed as a catcher first baseman, because they know he can't possibly catch a full season at the major league level. He's a butcher. Um, and his minor league hitting this year was dreadful. He has some pop in his bat, but you traded a closer that the New York Yankees, one of the best teams in baseball, is perfectly happy to run out there each and every night to close out games for them. You traded that guy for a bag of baseballs. A bag of baseballs may have been more useful than the three guys they got from the Yankees, only one of which you will ever know, and that's Flores. Um, we wouldn't be in this position of discussing, hey, the Pirates need to trade for a closer if they would have kept their closer. And I was fine last year. So before someone looks it up, yes, I was fine with them trading Bednar because losing teams don't need closers. I got to be honest. I was not expecting them to jump from where they were last year to where they are this year. I wasn't. So that was why I was on board with trading Bednar, but not if you're only getting 3 trash bags back in return. Then you just keep them. It's okay. And if you would have been losing this year, then you could try and trade them this year. So anyway, I'm jumping back out of the time machine. So that's my baseball segment. Took a while, sorry, but a lot happening in baseball. On to other stuff on the podcast. I want to make a real quick mention from the British Open last weekend. Ryan Fox, probably a name you won't ever hear again. He's one of those winners, but I want to give him a shout out. He plays ultra fast and proof that you can play winning golf. He won a major. Everyone knows this by now because everyone's said it a million times. It took him 22 seconds to hit the winning putt after his playing partner putted out. Sam Burns putted out, and it took him 22 seconds. He didn't aim point. He didn't plumb bob. He put the ball down. He looked at the line, and he hit the putt, and he made it. And that's how he hits every shot. The other guy's ball may not have landed on the green when he was lining up to take his shot. I love that. Golf doesn't have to, same way when I play. I played yesterday, and it took us way too long. There were 5 of us. One was an 8-year-old who was, by the way, the best player in our group. And I'm not kidding about that. The kid's going to be fantastic. But it took us forever. And as we got into the back 9, it makes my head, I lose interest. And then I play bad, and then I feel like just walking off the course. And if I wouldn't have been with friends, I would have walked off the course. But I wanted to respect them enough to finish the round. But same when I'm watching golf. I don't need to watch someone stand over a putt. Yes, Patrick Cantlay, I'm talking to you. Ryan Fox, who we may never hear from again, did prove one thing. You can play fast and still play winning golf. By the way, I know you didn't win any money off my picks if you bet to win, which is why it's hard in golf to bet to win. It's hard to win that bet. But my guys did well. I told you Oberg, and he was, I think, 5 under. He bogeyed 18. Would have been 6 under. Fleetwood finished, I think, 6 or 7 under. He was right there, the local favorite. And Cameron Young did an interview when he finished early after shooting a 62. Did he shoot a 62? Was he one of the 62s? Anyway, he bogeyed 18, and he said, oh, that's a bogey. All that means I'm going to lose by 4 shots instead of 3. He was convinced that one of the leaders was going to take off and win handily. Well, it turns out he waited 2.5 hours, and if Ryan Fox doesn't make that putt on the 18th hole, he's in a playoff, a 3-hole playoff with Cameron Young. So my picks were actually pretty good this time. They're not always that way, but they were pretty good this time. So give myself a shout out for that. Congress is not going to pass the SAVE Act, Save College. Trump wants them to pass the SAVE Act. I shouldn't call it that. The Save College Sports bill is going to die on the Senate floor. I think everyone should have known that. And it's why it's stupid. I get it. The courts have been unfriendly to the NCAA, totally favoring the players in every ruling. And so they were looking for some governmental help, which could have maybe put something in place, put a law in place that the courts wouldn't be able to touch. But they should have known better. Congress doesn't get anything done any other time. Why would they get something done with college sports? Greg Sankey's hanging on every word. Greg Sankey's still talking about, the SEC may pull away and do their own thing. Bye-bye, Greg. See ya. Maybe you can permanently kill college football or college sports in general. Maybe that's what your goal is, because all this greed is why we're in this spot to begin with. Have a system so that there's not, we want 6 playoff teams and we only want that conference to get 2 or 4 or whatever. No, take the 16 or 12. I guess it's 12. It'll get to 16. Take the best teams, have the automatic bids, have a system in place, a point system. Go back to the computer system. I never thought I'd say that, but it'd be better than putting those just buffoons, trying to think of a word, in a room and bicker back and forth until they put teams that don't belong in there into the playoffs. But they should have known Congress wasn't going to be able to bail them out. So it's back to the drawing board and see if they can come up with something, that can work. LeBron James. Let's go to that one next. It would have been my leadoff tonight, but I had my outline already done when the word came across my telephone that LeBron James signed with the Philadelphia 76ers, just like your boy told you. I don't know why anyone thought that was going to go somewhere else. That was it. When Jaylen Brown was traded for, it was already put in place that they were going to try and build this, I'm going to use my air quotes again, super team, wink, wink. So you do, look, on paper, you do have Joel Embiid, all-star. LeBron James, one of the best players in NBA history. Not the best, by the way. Tyrese Maxey, all-star. Jaylen Brown, all-star. VJ Edgecombe, up-and-coming potential all-star. So your front 5, but here's the thing. My friend Mark and I talked. He's my walking partner on some of these evenings, and we were talking about how it's already bad enough. Well, like when Embiid actually plays a game, you must run the offense through Embiid, and it slows their whole offense down because he holds the ball. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, when he plays, he's a great player. But he holds the ball and their offense becomes stagnant. And without him, you've got Maxey and Edgecombe and some of the other sort of side guys, running and gunning and running fast breaks and up tempo and, scoring 120 and 125. And then, okay, Joel's going to play this game. And now you're back down around 95 to 105 and the offense stagnates. Again, I'm not sitting here saying that he's not a good player, but now you're going to add the 43, 42. How old is he? Wonder onto the team, and he'll clog it up because he'll want to isolate, and Embiid will want to isolate, and it'll probably come to blows. Let's face it. Other than the fact that both of those two will miss so many games, they might be able to arrange it. If Nick Nurse is smart, he'll find a way to arrange it that Embiid will play on the games that LeBron sits out, and LeBron will play in the games that Embiid sits out. And maybe you'd have something there. The other thing is, does anyone know if Bronny James is on a plane to Philly yet? I'm sure that was part of the deal, that the Sixers will have to roster Bronny James. And quite frankly, when I look at the Sixers bench, he probably couldn't possibly be any worse than some of the guys they were rolling off the bench. So I guess it doesn't matter there. But I was asked by the sports editor of my local newspaper. He's doing a little segment. He calls it "Man on the Street," just getting quotes from people. And he said, "What do you think about LeBron going to Philadelphia?" I want some quotes. I said, "It's one more reason to not watch the NBA." And I said, "LeBron and Embiid may set a record for games missed, not due to injury. Just what do they call it? Load management, um, which I always think sounds like it should be in a porn movie. But um, they're not going to win. They're not going to win an NBA championship with that roster. They're not going to win. I'm on record, and I will continue to stay on record as saying that they will not win a championship with Joel Embiid on that roster. And you can add Jaylen Brown, who's probably past his better years, by the way, and LeBron James, who we all know is 5 to 7 years past his better years. Um, and Tyrese Maxey should be pissed, quite frankly. This team should be centered around him at this point. And instead, he's going to play third fiddle in a three-ring circus. So good luck, Philly fans that are going to still watch the Sixers. And I know I've seen it on my timeline. There's a lot of fans that are ecstatic, and this is awesome. LeBron in Philadelphia, more power to you, man. I don't see it at all. Sticking with basketball, but going to college basketball, I want to give Mike Rhodes, the Penn State basketball coach, a shout out. He was asking a shout out to the reporter who had the guts to ask it. Where does Penn State stand? Where do you stand when it comes to NIL versus the other Big Ten teams? And Mike Rhodes, without flinching, said, we're at the bottom. And it's what I've said since I started this podcast, and we've talked college basketball, we talked Penn State basketball. They don't care about college basketball. And it is so stupid. Like USC's at least making an effort. USC's never had, that's a lie. USC actually had a really good basketball program if you go back into the 70s, Paul Westphal and on through. And they've had some glimmers here and there. But USC is not willing to we'll write basketball off. We have a great beach volleyball team because that's what Penn State's doing. We have the best wrestling team, which is the best college sports program in the country. But it doesn't make you a penny. It doesn't make you a penny. Football and basketball make you money. And so in order to make money, you've got to spend money. And why Penn State can't figure out that, hey, it would be worth our while to at least be competitive in the Big Ten in basketball, because the Big Ten has down years like every other conference. And if you're at least respectable, you might catch that at the right time. Hey, we have a pretty good team together. So there's a lot of people that bash Mike Rhodes. Mike Rhodes, his hands are tied. Now, I'm not saying, again, I feel like I don't know why I keep defending myself. I'm going to say it one last time. I'm not suggesting that Mike Rhodes is up for Coach of the Year. I'm suggesting that he's probably not as bad a coach as what you might think, based on the fact that he can't get any good players because his athletic director won't set aside any money for basketball. So Penn State, you know how I feel about this, Penn State fans. You've got an athletic director problem. Pat Kraft is a punk. He thinks he's one of the guys. He thinks he's on the team. I don't need my AD to be rah-rah. Now, I don't mind my AD cheering the team on. I don't mind my AD going in the locker room, shaking the coach's hand after a big win. I don't mind any of that. But that's not what Pat Kraft does. And that, the stuff that was caught on tape. He's a jackass, and you've got a problem there. And, to tie this in with other stuff at Penn State, I saw they raised tuition again. Their tuition is already unaffordable for a lot of people unless you have someone that works there and you can get the discount. And I have a friend that works there that sent her 2 daughters, and she said, I got news for you. Even with the discount, it's too much. Like, it's expensive even with the discount. And then they give their president, Beneputi, or whatever her name is, a raise, a bonus. I can't figure this woman out either. She was at Louisville, and they were pumping her up. Oh, look what she did. She came in at, basketball program, all the turmoil that was going on. Well, the football program got worse under her leadership. the basketball program stagnated and got worse. She was there for the Kenny Payne nonsense. Um, so I can't say that she's good for sports. I know she's a equal opportunity type of person, and that's fine. I'm all for that. But it seems like she gets undue praise. And I know what is it? The website Pennsylvania Spotlight did a little thing on her, and they were kind of throwing it out there, like, and they were kind of doing what I'm doing, not suggesting that she's not good at her job, but kind of questioning why she gets heaps and heaps of praise because there's not a whole lot of evidence to show that she deserves it. Um, and then she gets a bonus. Tuition goes up. They're putting $7 gazillion into Beaver Stadium upgrades, um, and the basketball team can't get a couple bones to play with. Come on, man. And look, I am not suggesting that your ice hockey team is really good too. You don't have to throw those teams out. Like USC doesn't throw their water polo team and their beach volleyball teams aside because we're going to spend our money on basketball or their baseball team. Like they're trying to improve all those programs. And the programs that are good continue to be good. And I'm using USC because I'm familiar with them. I would think most schools are like that. But Penn State I can't, it's baffling. But I give Mike Rhodes credit for calling a spade a spade. Now you can question some of his moves. I question every coach. That's what we do when we're fans sitting here in our lazy boy. That's what we do. We question coaches and some of the decisions they make. So I think you're going to question every coach. So again, I'm not. You're going to question Mike Rhodes, some of the things he does, but it doesn't matter who the coach is at Penn State. If they're going to continue to lowball, he has less NIL money than Northwestern and Rutgers and Minnesota. Like, come on. Are you kidding me? It should be embarrassing to Pat Kraft, but he's too busy. He's in the bunker with Matt Campbell now, and we're going to win a national title in football. God bless him. Maybe they will. But it doesn't mean you have to throw basketball, your other moneymaker, out the window. I remember both the Bryce Jordan Center and back when they played at Rec Hall being filled to the rafters when they were good. It's like Pittsburgh Pirates baseball. You put something good on the floor, the fans will show up. But you got to spend money. That's the age we live in. So good for Mike Rhodes for being willing to call that out. So, all right, let me see. You're not going to be able to hear Spicoli either. Boy, I'm angry with myself. I think this is 2 out of 3 weeks I've forgotten my speaker. Let me see if I get Spicoli. Hey, Bob, what's your problem there? In case you didn't hear him actually say it. So my rant this week is on ESPN. What an embarrassing place that has become. First of all, you're guaranteed every year that they're laying droves of people off. And, we are so far gone from, the days of Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann and Stuart Scott and Tom Mees and Bob Lee, Charlie Steiner. They were just professionals. They had fun with it. Craig Kilborn got his start there at ESPN. And back before Mike Greenberg's head was too big to fit through the door. And now they've been taken over by two loudmouths. Pat McAfee running his Bros for Bros fraternity row podcast / sports show. And I'm going to yell loud enough that you can hear me from the rafters. Stephen A. Smith have hijacked that network into being unwatchable. Carl Ravitch, for God's sakes, got the cut. Ravitch started here in central Pennsylvania on Channel 27 Sports. And he was at ESPN for 32 years. And look, every company you're allowed to get rid of people. You are. It's obviously the right of being a business owner. Here's part one of my rant. This is a two-parter, and they're not really tied together. It was how they did it. Um, I can see if they found Ryan Clark to be a little too abrasive and a little too. Ryan Clark's one of those guys that is not really willing to hear the other side of an argument. That's the way I always feel about him. I know a lot of people get into he's a race baiter and blah blah blah. I look, he's African American. I think that goes without saying. He's going to stick up for African Americans in sports, and if he thinks there's something going wrong, my problem with Ryan Clark is on any of his opinions, you could tell. Like, don't tell me I'm wrong because I'm not going to listen. And that's no way to debate, and that's no way to have, like if I'm wrong on here, I hope someone, my buddy Scott always he'll send me a message, say, hey, you got that wrong. Like the thing I did on the football players, Franco Harris wore 34 at Penn State, not 32. Now that was ESPN's mistake, but still I projected it on my podcast. So I want people to tell me if I'm wrong or if they disagree with me. Ryan Clark just never seemed. So the fact that they wanted to fire him is fine. The fact that they fired him in the middle of his show during a break because apparently those imbeciles at Outkick, which would be Clay Travis and those mouth breathers, got wind of it and were going to release it on the air, and they didn't want it to get back. So whatever the case is, you waited for a TV break, and then you pull Ryan Clark aside and say, hey, by the way, you're fired. They're lucky someone didn't get punched in the nose. Carl Ravitch finds out when a website contacts him and says, hey, so what are your thoughts on being released from ESPN after 32 years? And, Ravitch was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. That is about as unprofessional for an organization like ESPN. That's about as unprofessional as you could possibly get and unacceptable. I wouldn't want my local ice cream stand to fire people that way, let alone one of the major sports network on TV. And that's the way they're going to fire their employees is a travesty. Here's the other part of my rant, which again is not really tied to that. Ryan Clark and Cam Newton was another one, and I think there was a third, Bart Scott. Look, I'm sick of seeing so many former players get into the media. There are some of them that are good at. Look at Tom. Tom Brady is god awful. Okay, he's god awful. But he's Tom Brady, and I'm supposed to listen to him because he knows everything. I mean, he does know a lot about football. I'd love to be able to pick his brain. I just don't want to hear him announce. He's not good at it. When I think about people that I like to listen to, it's almost never an ex-athlete. Dan Patrick is my favorite sports talk guy. Always has been. Colin Cowherd, even though I disagree with him somewhat frequently, I enjoy listening to. Rich Eisen, I enjoy listening to. When it was Greeny and Golick on that podcast, now Golick is the one ex-athlete that would be on this list. I loved listening to them. Back in the day, it was Brent Musburger, guys like that I liked listening to. When I think I'm a Pittsburgh fan, so I listen to Pittsburgh media. DK, not an athlete. Mark Madden, not an athlete. Some of the guys at what is it, the Fan or whatever the station is that I watch some of their podcasts. It's almost never a former athlete. Like I'm sick of Kirk Herbstreit. I'm just like. People that get into broadcasting do it because that's what they want to do. And so I'd much rather listen to some of those guys than all these ex-athletes. So that's the other part of my rant is let's quit hiring all these ex-athletes. And finally, my off-topic topic, the beach, vacation in general. It was too short this year. My son's work schedule and his lack of enthusiasm for I think I don't know if I said this on the podcast or not. He says I don't take risks. I'm too conservative. I like going to the Jersey Shore. We go Ocean City, Wildwood. Sometimes we'll scoot down to Cape May. Last year we checked out Atlantic City for the first time. I thought it was a dungeon. Don't need to go back there. But anyway, but I like the Jersey Shore, and he wants to go different places. He's 20, going to be 21. I get it. He also would have liked his friends. None of his friends could come along. Again, work schedules and stuff. And I get it. So it was a little short this week, but I love the Jersey Shore. Shout out to Mariners Arcade. I won a Bill Mazeroski signed Cooperstown baseball bat, which is prominently displayed now in a case. I won a Rocky Blyer signed Steelers black matted football helmet. It's one of their alternate. I don't know if they've ever. I think they may have worn it before. And it says Steeler Forever. He signed Steeler Forever. It's pretty cool. And maybe the coolest one is those Funko Pops. I should have brought it over to put it on camera. Those little figurines. A Wild Thing signed by Charlie Sheen. Um, my second favorite sports movie to Caddyshack. Um, and I already have a Chevy Chase signed Caddyshack Funko Pop from a previous year. So covered my two favorite sports movies with signed Funko Pops. Love going in there because I'm a little kid. I'm a 59-year-old, tiny, small little kid that gets a kick out of playing arcade games, and then you get to win cool stuff. But I love the beach. I love the food. I love the boardwalk. I love vacation at the beach at the Jersey Shore. But it got me thinking. I think vacation, one of the things that's interesting, I think everyone goes, my friend Scott has a beach house in Rehoboth. Oh, I'm sure he picked it there because they like Rehoboth. And so I do think you go back. Now, it doesn't mean you can't go. And I told my son one of these years here, and, we got to get him through school. I got to retire and then maybe see some things around the country that he will certainly be invited to go along. Maybe he'll have a family by then, who knows? But, um, but you go where you're comfortable. But here's the cool thing about vacation, whether you're a go to the mountains kind of guy or gal, or a go to the beach person, or wherever it is that you go, amusement parks, whatever it is, sightseeing. Um, the cool thing about vacation is it allows you to escape reality um, for whatever the amount of time, week, whatever it is that you go on vacation for. I don't sit and worry. My son was like, "Well, I think that's costs too much money." I said, "I don't care. We're on vacation. I'm going to spend money on vacation." So I'm not sitting there with my calculator saying, "Oh, geez, it might go over my budget," because you're not in reality. You're on vacation, and you spend time and do things that you probably wouldn't do during your regular days of your life. Um, Now, I'd love to live at the beach. I've said this multiple times, and then I guess it would become a daily routine. Um, I think it's a little too expensive. Ocean City, I know, is super expensive. Their town is second to none, though. Really cool town with great shops, great little restaurants and cafes and whatnot. And that's aside from the cool stuff up on the boardwalk and stuff. And Wildwood, I could live in Wildwood too. It's just not quite as nice in town as it is in Ocean City, but um, probably not going to happen. But there you go. My son says I don't take risks. That would be a risk if I retired and picked up and moved to the beach. But we'll see. But anyway, I enjoy my time down there as always. Won some cool stuff. Great weather. The smoky stuff did come in the last day we were there. By the time we got back home, it was much worse back home than it was down there. But um, other than the last day was super hot, like it was stifling hot, even with the ocean breeze, it was a warm breeze. It was a little stifling. But otherwise, great trip again. Um, Maybe get back next year, maybe not. We'll see. Probably not with my son, but we'll see. I'll be back there again at some point, no doubt about that. But so shout out Mariners Arcade. Shout out in general to the Jersey Shore. All right, so be paying attention. That trade deadline is coming up, baseball fans. See who your team, what kind of moves they may make, whether they're buyers or sellers. Um, You can hear the fallout on the LeBron James nonsense and all kinds of stuff that will be going on in the sports world. So I know we have really great weather right now here in central Pennsylvania. So if you're like us, enjoy the weather, enjoy the last 6 weeks till Labor Day or something like that, 5 weeks. So enjoy the home stretch of summer. And you know the drill. Be nice to one another.